today. And hi to everybody who's watching. I know that right now we've got a massive range of people from all around the world, including lots of our US universities. And we're super excited to be presenting this session with everybody today. So I'm just going to start showing my slides, but before we kind of kick off, it would be great to get a couple of intros from you guys, Baiyun and Kevin, and tell us a bit more about yourselves and your roles at ASU and what you kind of manage in your day-to-day.
I can start. My name is Kevin Chow. I'm the coordinator senior at Arizona State University. Also an alum, graduated from ASU and been working with ASU for about 7 years. And we are on the international admissions team. And we normally handle students from China, but really we work with international students from all over the globe, regardless of where they come.
Hey everyone, my name is Baiyun. So I'm International Recruitment Coordinator with AS International Mission Team. I've been working with ASU for more than 4 years. Work closely with Kevin every day. And thank you for the invitation. And I'm very glad to be here today.
Amazing. Thank you both. I've been assured by somebody else I was chatting to in Arizona today that it's a very sunny day, around 25 degrees Celsius. So I'm just a little bit jealous in my cold dining room in London. As you can see, I've got about 15 lights beaming into this room to try and make it a little bit brighter. But for those of you who have never met me before, my name's Amy and I'm the head of customer success for the USA. I've been working with ASU since they launched in May 2019. So the platform's now been live for almost 18 months and it's seen some really incredible traffic, connecting with lots and lots of different students all around the world. And today we're going to be talking all about incorporating student voice into every point of the application cycle. And specifically Baiyun and Kevin are going to be sharing some of their experiences, some of their tips and advice on how you can go about incorporating this into your recruitment strategy so that you can make your current students more visible and more accessible to prospects, as they move through that application funnel. So hopefully everybody can see my screen and we're going to kick off with the ASU story. So taking it right back to the beginning, even before, you guys decided to use Unibuddy and bring it into the university, why is it that student voice is so important at Arizona State and how were you recruiting and engaging with students before you use something like this?
All right, I'll take this one. So student voice, they're real voice and they just more convincing for our prospective students. So just think about it. Our current students, they were in a process of searching for different schools, applying to different schools and in the end, choosing a school to attend. And now, they are current students studying in a classroom, in the library, living in a residential hall and engaging on different campus activities. So those are all their experience, their daily college life. So, our prospective students, they would like to hear, from current students because it's their experience. It just means more and, more convincing to them.
Totally.
Definitely means more coming from students than us. Even though I was a student and alum, so technically they're getting the student perspective, but they're not getting the current student perspective, which is really what they want. Since I went to school, let's say a while ago. So in the past, how we engage with students before, international students before, were pretty basic with email broadcasts, phone calls, and of course there's some social media, and especially with China, WeChat, of course, Facebook, Instagram, things of that nature. And that's how we really communicated and recruited with students. And of course, in person at fairs and high school visits as well.
Totally. I think that's a really good point you make, Kevin. And it really reminds me of when I also used to work in admissions at London University, way back before I was working at Unibuddy. And We used to do lots of events and have our kind of reps, our student recruitment reps out representing the university. And as much as I really loved the university, I thought it was one of the best universities ever. I loved the students that I was working with, the campus, the programs they had to offer. But I didn't actually study there, and I didn't graduate from that school. And as much as I tried, I just wasn't able to give them that authentic day-to-day insight. What's it like in the cafeteria? Like, what's my favorite club or organization, or, what's the
residential halls?
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. What are the residences like? And that's such a big question when you're thinking about moving, or especially international students, when they're leaving a home country, they're leaving everything that they're used to and familiar with. These small details actually can be some of the most decisive and the most important when making a decision. So I know exactly what you mean there. And as much as I was sad to admit it, there was certainly some things I just wasn't able to give when I was in admissions. So I can relate. And then I guess the question leading on from that is, did you face any specific challenges? So, in the ways that you were promoting students and connecting with students, was there anything that was a struggle, anything that was difficult for you that you saw a need to improve or, to build on?
I can speak to this one. Well, when we're using email, there's always the challenge of our students checking their email for one. Are they opening it up? And even when they do open it up, how long are they actually reading through it before they close it and move on or delete it? And so that's always been a struggle and challenge, especially with certain regions and populations. And I think we all know China and students from China, they're not in the habit of checking their email because everything's done through WeChat, for example. So that's definitely a challenge. Different time zones is a challenge in keeping students engaged outside of travel times or travel season, when we can actually engage with them at their high school or at college fairs. But how do we stay engaged with them throughout the entire year? So those are kind of the challenges in staying connected.
Definitely. I think that's a really good point as well about email. And it's one of these things, I think, that we often used to think that email could be a one size fits all, and that you send out a campaign or you send out a really exciting series of emails, but you just never know if students are even going to check anymore. And it can be quite difficult to rely on them being super engaged. And I know with Chinese students as well, they're using WeChat more than email for their day-to-day communications, and they're more used to that chat style, a kind of informal way of reaching out to universities and connecting with them in that way. So that's really, really interesting. So the next slide is kind of ASU in stats. And I'm hoping that, you guys can talk us through this a bit. These are some really incredible numbers for your platform and for your students. And I mentioned before that you launched around 18 months ago. So you've been using Unibuddy now for an entire application cycle. And it'd be great, maybe Kevin or Baiyun, just to walk us through where you're at and how many countries you've connected with and how many buddies you have and how many conversations have been taking place as well.
I'll actually let Baiyun kind of start this one, since she has done a tremendous job in, working with our Unibuddy student ambassadors and kind of maintaining and updating the platform and making sure everybody's informed. But we definitely have lots of conversation, lots of prospects up to this point. So I'll let Baiyun speak a little bit to that.
Okay. Actually, y'all can see on this slide some really good numbers. So we have 2,281 prospects, and they're from 136 countries, so very diverse. It's very like ASU, because we are a diverse university. And 5,494 conversations. That's really great. And those are being done by our ambassadors, just 26 ambassadors. So I think this is really good because, I see, a lot of traffic conversations on this platform, chatting with ambassadors, asking about campus life, asking about ASU. And I feel this is just a very, a very useful or very effective way to have this conversation on this platform to help our prospective students.
Totally. And on our slide here, we've got, I mean, you've got 136 different countries represented, which is pretty colossal. I think if we had one of those maps on the wall, there'd be pins all over it for the countries that ASU have connected with. And when we were preparing for this presentation, we reviewed the top 10 countries. So the top 10 countries that have been using the platform and engaging with it. Were there any surprises in that list, or any kind of countries that you weren't necessarily expecting, or you don't normally see in your top lists that are coming through on Unibuddy?
Yeah. So I can share this with our audience today. Actually, the inquiries that we receive a lot from the following countries. Actually, the top 10 that we have are from, the first one is India. And then followed by that is Ghana, United States, Nigeria, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, China, UK, and Kenya. To be honest, on this top 10 countries, like India, China, Saudi Arabia, I'm not quite surprised because we do have a lot of international students from these countries. But it's kind of a little surprising to see Ghana as second, Nigeria, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they're on the top. We do have international students from these regions, but it's kind of surprising and interesting to see, like, we have a lot of inquiries from those regions. And we also have students from the United States. And so that's interesting to see, some domestic students, they will also like to chat with our student ambassadors to learn about ASU, about campus life.
Interesting. And also some British students on there as well. So
UK was a surprise, definitely a surprise too.
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're definitely looking for warmer, sunny, happier places sometimes,
Maybe that's why, huh?
Yeah, and Arizona.
Weather's a big deal.
Yeah, and Arizona seems to have a lot of sunshine and a lot of happy people around the clock. So maybe that's a decisive factor.
Maybe.
Amazing, thanks both. So the main part of the presentation today is really kind of walking through the stages in the application cycle. We've broken these down into the prospect, the applicant stage, and then the kind of admitted and enrolled stage. And what we're going to do today is just talk through a few questions or discussion points around how ASU has gone about incorporating student voice and student presence into each of these stages to really build a sense of belonging, to provide information to students, and I guess just to be kind of visible and accessible to students in a slightly different way, when compared with the more traditional communication channels. And so the first question, I mean, we've talked a little bit already about being surprised by certain regions, but the first question is about how you actually engage with students. And, with Unibuddy, do you actually target or engage with particular places in the world, or is it, open to or targeted to everybody?
Yeah, so we do not want to target any specific regions. Like I said, we ASU embrace diversity. We're a diverse university. We measure our success not by who we exclude, but by who we include and how they succeed. So definitely, we do not target any specific regions. We want students from different parts of the world, different regions, to reach out to us to learn more about ASU.
Perfect. I think you're definitely doing something right if you've got 136 countries so far. So definitely on the right track there. And then I think this is a question that's always really popular from our partner universities, especially, ASU, you're a big school, lots of international students. How did you go about recruiting those ambassadors? How did you decide on who was going to use the platform and represent the school? And did you prioritize particular levels or majors, or was it really open to everyone?
Yeah, I'll continue with this one. So we do not prioritize any specific levels or majors because we want our student ambassadors pool to be very diverse as well. That means when prospective students come to the platform and they will see, oh, that person is, from the same, my country is my country, and from the same area, or maybe they were attending the same high school. So it just, make the prospective student more willing to talk with our student ambassadors. So, we also want to have a diverse, pool of student ambassadors. And in terms of recruitment, so we just, send off the communication out and ask all international students to say, hey, do you have an interest in this? This is what we're doing. And we do receive a lot of replies from international students saying, oh, they are interested in this. And then we have to, identify a group of student ambassadors that can best represent all our programs and the majors. And we do ask them to complete some forms to read and sign. So for example, we have a very just a basic form, like they need to tell us their basic information. And also we have an open question for them to answer. The question is, how has your ASU experience been so far? So we want to see how they answer this question. And also we have a member agreement form for them to sign because we want them to understand they represent ASU. They still need to follow some regulations, such as they can now share their conversation with prospective students on other social media. It's privacy. So things like that, they have to understand and sign a form. And we also have a photo release form for them to sign. So on Unibuddy platform, we have to put their photo, their headshot on that. So student, can have to see, oh, that's you. So they have to agree, to have their photo on the Unibuddy platform on the website. So after they complete all these forms and send those back to us, and then we'll ask them to attend the less than hour Unibuddy training, for them to have better understanding of what this platform is, how to set up their account, what kind of questions to expect and how to answer. So I think that's a really good something good to start with. And then after they complete the training, they come back to us, and all we need to do is we can log into our Unibuddy administrative page and put in their email address and send them the invitation link. So it's very easy, and they receive the link, and they can just they receive the link through their email, and then they can click on that and just go step by step to set up their account, and they are one of us within our Unibuddy family.
Amazing. I really like your suggestion, or the way that you kind of capture their experience. I think having one question that they answer is such a nice way to get a sense of their experience so far. And also it's a great indicator of how they're going to respond to questions from students. And I imagine, with ASU, you must receive quite a lot of applications from a lot of students. So it can also be a really easy way to kind of work out which students would be best suited to this kind of role, and which students are really going to thrive on the platform and share a really positive experience with students as well. That's really interesting. Thank you. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat today. So my next question is about the website. So we've talked a little bit about, embedding student voice in your kind of communications, and embedding student voice in how you actually choose your students and kind of put them up on the platform. But the website, is so integral to Unibuddy, and to also generally to students, when they come to any university website and they're looking for information and insights, into that experience, the easier, I guess, you can make that available to them, and the more immediately it's available to them, the better. Because as we know, I think students, they don't have the longest attention span, Generation Z. I think they often look for information that's very immediate and streamlined and easy to access. So how did ASU approach that, and how did you kind of embed the product on your website to make sure that students could see student voice and engage with it easily?
Yeah, so actually we embed Unibuddy platform currently only on our international admission page. If I remember correctly, it just took less than a day for our communication team to work with Unibuddy team, to have that embedded on our website. And then for our team, like including all our staff member and our student workers, we answer student questions, and then we always want them to reference, our international admission website, because a lot of information are there. And even though we answer, their current question, but they will go to the next step. They may have other issues or other questions, concerns. So we always want them to know, like, the resources there. You can always, go back to that page, look for more information. And so when they go to our international admission page, actually Unibuddy is on that too. It's kind of like a postcard is on the bottom right-hand side. So when they go to the international admission page, that Unibuddy part will pop up, and they will randomly show student their picture and their major, and they have a verbiage like do you want to learn more about ASU campus life? So student will see that it's very noticeable. So they will, oh yeah, I can talk with a current student. And so it's very easy. They can just click on that and then they sign up and just ask questions and talk with our current ambassadors. So it's very noticeable, very easy. I think once students come to the website, yeah, if they are interested in that part, they cannot miss it.
Yeah, the campus, and it's great because the widget shows, it doesn't show the last name, it does show the first name of ambassadors, but it also shows what level they're undergraduate or graduate, and what they're studying, the program or major they're in, which is very helpful for students when they visit the site, because they'll say, oh, okay, that's the major I'm applying for, or I'm interested in, I want to learn more about. I'm going to talk to this individual.
Yeah.
So it's very well done, and the landing page kind of will show all the ambassadors they can choose from, which is very helpful.
I think that's a really good point, Kevin. I think it comes back to that kind of student experience of using something like this, or really any kind of tool to connect with current students or to access student voice. You know, that connection can come in many different forms, and it may be, you know, somebody's nationality, it may be the language that they speak, it may be the program that they're interested in, or it might just be, you know, a hobby or an interest, or something that they find they have in common with someone, that it sparks that initial conversation and that initial connection with a current student. And that's where the kind of filtering can be really powerful, because it helps them to navigate that and to really pinpoint exactly what they want to find out about and who they want to connect with as well. So I think that's a really good point. So we're going to move on now to the applicant stage. And I think, you know, all universities watching this session today can really sympathize, especially kind of US universities, with the decision deadline and where it falls in the spring, can really sympathize with the stress that was caused this year, and the uncertainty, and also just the general disruption that lovely COVID-19 brought down upon, you know, institutions globally. And when it all kind of started spreading and really disrupting universities, it was right before the decision deadline for students at a lot of schools. And so it'd be really interesting to hear how ASU kind of handled that, and how you stayed connected with your students during this time, so that they could still connect with students and also staff as well at the institution.
Yeah, well, definitely COVID affected everyone, universities around the world, everyone around the world, in everything that we do. So things will definitely be looking different moving forward. As Amy said, it affected decision deadline, and affected the upcoming semester in a very big way. And so ASU, generally speaking, did actually a really great job in basically switching gears and making sure that we have certain hybrid models in place and online availability and things like that. So within that realm, there were also student videos that were coming out showing, here's the new platform, this is what ASU Sync looks like, this is what the hybrid model looks like, this is what to expect, the programs to use, and things like that. And so we continued with student videos, we continued with social media, and staying connected with students, since nobody was traveling. So everyone was doing sessions like very similar to this, a lot of Zoom sessions, a lot of virtual information sessions, workshops, for example, for applications. And so those are the things that we try to do to continue to stay engaged with students, because this is also the time when they have a lot of questions, not only with academics, but definitely with student life. What is the campus like now with COVID, and how are students and professors interacting with each other at this time? So, I mean, on top of using social media and videos, we also made sure, since we had Unibuddy, to make sure our ambassadors are aware of different resources are available too.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And, I was listening into a session earlier, the crisis PR session, which was super interesting and really insightful. And they were discussing the really changeable nature of COVID, and it's so difficult, for a university to keep a pace with that when every single day it feels like the policies are changing, the rules are changing, the situation and the very kind of structures that reassure students normally and get them excited about coming to university were being sort of thrown out of balance. And it's just almost impossible to keep up with that. And I think for international teams especially, it was really challenging. So it's really interesting and honestly really impressive. I think just so impressive to see how you and how so many teams just took it in your stride and found ways to adapt. I guess that's something that COVID's kind of forced us all to do, is become even more adaptable than before and more creative. And something else that you did, which leads us on to our next question, is you started utilizing the staff profiles and the staff buddy element of Unibuddy. And I think it's worth taking a moment here just to talk about staff voice as well, in addition to student, because this really was such an essential part of the response to COVID-19. Whether it was on Unibuddy or not, I think, staff and admissions teams really wanted to be accessible and kind of needed to be accessible in a way that they could have delivered in person in previous, in olden times or in pre-COVID times. They could have gone to events and you could have engaged that way. So how did you kind of leverage these staff profiles and to stay connected with your students and stay kind of engaged with them?
Yeah, good question. And among all those other things that I mentioned, the changes, let's not forget all the immigration changes that's been going on too, and still evolving. Or we'll get updates maybe 3 weeks prior to a semester start from immigration. So that's also a definite challenge that we're working through. So in regards to student profiles, what's great about this is it is essentially like an instant messenger. It's an informal way of communication. And so students are more comfortable with that. And being able to reach out to Baiyun, myself, one of the staff members, because, for example, if they have specific questions about admissions or scholarship, those are something that university and administrative staff would need to answer or maybe dig a little bit deeper, because it's case by case, depending on the student and their student file. So they would normally reach out to us for those questions. And we've been receiving quite a bit of inquiries, which are great. It lets us stay directly engaged with some of these students, understand what is on their mind, what's their concern at different times, different stages throughout the year. Students are definitely more responsive. So, for example, if I send an email to a student, I may or may not get a response in 24 hours, or may or may not get a response in a week. Whereas the staff profile has been very useful in the sense that they ask a question, I respond, and because this is a platform that can be easily done on their mobile device, that they're able to respond right away. I would answer a question because of time differences, right? It's another challenge that I would answer a question maybe at my time at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but it might be in the middle of the night, but it might ding on their phone and they're able to see that and respond. And then we actually engage in a conversation for 5-10 minutes to make sure their questions are answered, because usually they have follow-up questions. But so the staff profile has been very useful because I think we're reaching an audience that may or may not feel comfortable emailing us or take the time to email us, whereas the staff profile, it's a very easy way to communicate.
Amazing, thank you. And I often think it's funny, sometimes the smallest thing of like having a photo and having a profile is just that little bit that makes you feel more of a human and like a real person is at the end of that line. And I think in these times that it's a small thing, but it really does mean a lot. However you do it, whether it's on social media, whether it's through like events that you run, or whether it's through something like Unibuddy, just being a real person and someone that's available for them, I think that goes a long way, doesn't it?
Yep. They're happy to be speaking to a real person, not a robot that has automated message.
Exactly. So moving on to the last kind of segment in the cycle that we're discussing today. So the admit and the enroll, I mean, again, this period has been like no other, thanks to COVID-19, and everything is unprecedented. I saw a great meme the other day that said, I miss precedented times. And that really does speak to me because I'm kind of nostalgic for precedented times. They were a lot more predictable. They felt that way anyway. But the admit and the enroll stage, this is such a kind of crucial part in the cycle. Once a student's made a decision, really, it's about keeping them engaged, keeping them kind of close and involved in the university up until the point at which they enroll. And so a question I have here is about what students need, and what do you think they actually need at this point in the cycle in terms of student voice and in terms of the advice and guidance you can give them?
So here's the thing. I just feel a lot of things after student admitted, and they have to deal with different departments. So for example, as we all know, after they admitted, they will, if they're very serious, they want to come to the school, and they were like, oh yeah, I need to find a place to live, and they will need to apply for housing. So they need to submit, like, for example, housing application, and they will want to know like when I can register. Then they have to reach out to their department and to reach out to an academic advisor to see, what the process look like, how they can register classes. And then they may also wondering like when I can attend orientation. So all those things, they have to do, and also they have to deal with our admissions office to get I-20 document as an international student. So I would say a lot of things, even they got admitted, it's not done. And they are very serious. They want to enroll. A lot of steps they are waiting for them. And actually for ASU, we don't want to get them overwhelmed. We have their student account. We have a checklist, show them step by step how they can do all those stuff. So I would say at this stage, definitely not just the student voice. They need a lot of support and from different departments, different teams on ASU campus. And for admissions, yes, we'll help them with the I-20 process, make sure they can enter the country, they can be on campus. And we also, just to kind of guide them, like, okay, for this step, or like for housing, if you have any questions or concerns, then housing will be, the good department for you to work directly with. So I think, at this stage, definitely, students need a lot of support from different teams, different departments on the campus.
Yeah, I think that you made two really good points there. And the first one is keeping it simple. I think, there's so much information flying around at the moment. I mean, just in general life, I feel like in my own life, there's just so much coming at me all the time, whether it's the government guidance, whether it's like stuff that we're doing on the Unibuddy side, whether it's my personal life, it all seems so changeable. And so if you imagine for international students, it's already a lot for them to be preparing for and organizing. And so I really like that. I think that really must be effective, taking it back to the basics, stripping it down and giving them a list they can follow, because there's quite a few bits they have to organize before they're ready to actually arrive and start studying virtually or through a kind of hybrid model. And I think you also made a good point about the logistical side of going to university. We don't often talk about this part of it that much, but those basic questions about, well, when can I move into my residences, or what's the food like in the cafeteria, or is there a way for me to do my laundry, or what does the first week look like? These kinds of small questions, especially for someone who's leaving a home country, maybe they've never been to the US before, or it's going to be a first for them. I think those small details are actually a lot more important than they sound on the surface. And it's interesting to hear that. And I think I totally agree that what they need is just little bits of like practical information to help them prepare and feel ready to kind of enroll and get going. And then my last question around this point is around incentivizing your student ambassadors. So, you've got a fantastic and like really diverse cohort of ambassadors on the ASU platform, and they're really active. I mean, the traffic is crazy on your platform for staff and student ambassadors. How do you go about keeping them kind of motivated and, rewarding good work? Because I know your ambassadors are voluntary, and, many of our university partners have voluntary ambassadors. And this is certainly, I think, something that they'd appreciate some advice on.
Yeah, actually, Kevin and I talked about this like beginning of the year, and we have different ideas, and we were like, yeah, probably like we can have a pizza party, for all the ambassadors to come in, because we don't just want them to feel like, okay, they just help our perspective. We always want to show our appreciation, and we want them to feel connected with each other. We're now say a club or organization, but we're a big family, right? We want people to have a sense of belonging. But just because COVID, we have to hold on everything. So that is kind of a sad part. But instead of, another way we did is we create a certificate to show our appreciation. And we sent those to all our student ambassadors. So hopefully it can be, something that they can feel proud to have. I think that will be something good. Maybe they can show to their future employers to show, their dedication, their volunteer experience with ASU being a student ambassador on this platform.
I think that's such a nice touch, and it's certainly something we've seen work really well with lots of different universities, different focuses and different sizes of ambassador programs. It's really nice, and it doesn't cost anything to show students the great work and the progress that they've made. And I think that's interesting. You mentioned there about them using it on their resume and their applications. That's such a great suggestion, because for voluntary ambassadors, this position is still a great opportunity for them to build a lot of their professional skills, their communication skills, their kind of mentorship, the sense of responsibility and being trusted by ASU to essentially be a kind of spokesperson, public spokesperson for the school. It's not suited for every student. And so I think that's a really nice touch, and certainly something that they can take value from. And it also reminds them that they're making a real difference. And I really apologize if you can hear my cat has a comically large bell, which I'm a bit worried is feeding into the audio as I'm talking. Should have removed him before we did this talk. Apologies. But I think it's such a small thing, and it really goes a long way. And so I think I'm excited to see, how you guys continue to be creative and innovative. And I know that you often have lots of great ideas, and I'm sure that this semester there's going to be some new creative things coming from you both virtually. So
I was just going to add, for those applying to graduate school even.
Right, exactly.
This might be something helpful to include in their experience in order to show that certificate.
I think that's, absolutely, 100%. I would agree with that. And especially, if they're going into another academic position, all of those skills and the trust that the university has put in them, I think that really says a lot. And having the students up there, being the voice of ASU is a special kind of responsibility. So I totally agree with you there. So our final section is around the future of Unibuddy. And your plans kind of going forwards, and what how you plan on building out the ASU platform and really leveraging student voice for the next academic year. And so how are you kind of planning on promoting, and what kind of ideas do you have for really growing your student voice?
That's a great question. These are definitely things that we're looking at various ways and effective ways for this kind of for this area. And I would say right now we've done a great job of driving students and driving traffic to our admissions website for international students, and that's where the widget is, and that's where they can see our Unibuddy student ambassadors. But in the future, we're already getting good traffic and good diversity, but we really want to, increase that as well. So we want to put more. We did email broadcasts in the past, but more regularly we'll continue with email broadcasts. But at the same time, WeChat, again, with all the different social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, those type of things. But on top of that, I would like to see if we could utilize the student blogs more on the Unibuddy platform, because I feel that those could be useful, and I don't think they've been utilized as much. And so that's something that we could put more resources or more kind of maybe focus on. I think that will help, and that would only just help and increase the traffic and with the conversation with Unibuddy. And at that time, we will see if we need to also reassess and potentially add additional student ambassadors, but to a manageable amount. Still want to keep it under 50 most likely, just to make sure we can still manage the group and stay engaged with all the ambassadors. So that's some of the plans to start.
Just a few things.
A few things.
I think, yeah, that's great. And like you say, the blogs and the vlogs, such an amazing kind of visual and creative way for students, especially now that everybody's virtual. We've seen universities make great use of these, and often doing, you know, little intro videos or quick tours of like their home office or their home study setup, all of these little snippets that really help students get a sense of what the student community is like and what the students are like at ASU. And I think that's one of the hardest things, isn't it, to get a grasp on when you can't go and visit and see it in person. That's really interesting. So I realize we're almost out of time. And so we're going to just round off with a final question for both of you. And hopefully this goes out to all of our partners who are watching. But if you could give, you know, universities one tip or a piece of advice for embedding student voice, what would it be?
That's a good question. I mean,
can start. Oh.
Yeah, you go for it.
I just think so right now, especially this year, is it's hard because COVID. So we always want to make sure students understand we are now closed. We are still open. We are still here to help them. So so I think building the connections through different channels is very important. I think as universities, it's very important, you know, just be open, you know, to accept new things, to try different things, try things that you may never use it before, and just use different channels, you know, to make student voice to be heard. I think that would be very important.
I think that's a great one. And definitely, you know, there's a beauty in over communicating at the moment, which I think is more necessary than ever, isn't it? Now that we're all remote.
Yeah. To add to that, that's a great answer, Baiyun. I'd say just in general, I would say having, regardless where the student voice is coming from and what channel, that it remains authentic, because I think that's very important. Just have authentic student voice, you know, that's not sound rehearsed or forced, and just, you know, that keeps things real and keeps real connection with the communicators.
I think that's such an important point you're making, Kevin. Actually, a really nice one to end on, really. Just the authenticity and the realness. And something we always often used to say to ambassadors is, you know, if you're uploading a video or you're writing a blog, you know, it doesn't have to be this perfect, polished kind of marketing style post. You know, actually, the more kind of flawed it is, the more awesome it is, the more real it is, and actually the more relatable it is for students, because it feels honest and it feels like it's coming from a really original and authentic place. And I think that speaks volumes. So that's a nice way to end. And I can see Poppy's hopped back in to kind of see us out.
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much, Amy. And Baiyun and Kevin, fantastic insights from ASU. That was fabulous. So thank you so much for sharing that. It sounds like you're doing a lot of wonderful things over in Arizona.
Thanks, Poppy.
Thank you. So you can see the beautiful weather behind me.
I Yeah, like Amy, I'm in very rainy and dark. You can't tell from the giant light that's on my face, but it is very rainy and dark in London, I promise. Fab. Okay, well, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the conference, guys. Have a good rest of the time at the event, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks,
Take care,
Poppy.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.